We really appreciate your time. I know that there's lots of other distractions out there, and we really appreciate your time and attention and focus here. If we had this event last week, it could have been called the Cyber Showers, but we've maintained our belief that every cyber sunset that we've had, we always see the sun, right? And that's why this is an uplifting community that we wanted to create here, and you can just see that that is going to be maintained for the future, whenever cyber sunset that we continue to have. My name is Chad Bartlett. I'm from Grove, and yeah, we're a global cybersecurity and cloud business. We've been helping many of our customers for the last 18 years to help improve their cloud and cybersecurity capabilities. Really want to welcome you all here today, and yeah, appreciate your time. Yeah, so what I'd like to just do is just do a quick little introduction. I'm going to hand over to Brian very shortly, but yeah, just wanted to say that we've been doing these sessions for the last 12 months, and we've got a lot of good feedback. Not in Cape Town yet. This is our first one in Cape Town. We've been hosting them in Mauritius and also Botswana. So Shanna is here all the way from Mauritius, one of our customers. So just want to say thank you very much for coming here. I know you've been a great supporter of our community that we've been building there. So thank you for being here, and yeah, just make Shanna feel welcome and at home. You might be thinking, well, what's the purpose of the Cyber Sunsets, right? So the purpose of the Cyber Sunsets is quite simple. It's to create a uplifting community of like-minded individuals who are passionate about cybersecurity, and also meeting and networking with new individuals, right? And also experiencing amazing life experiences like this, right? And that's what we're trying to create with the Cyber Sunsets community. A couple of years ago, before the world changed, before we all went into Zoom, we actually were doing similar sessions like this. It was called the Innovators Club, and maybe some of you might have come and attended some of those. But we think now, you know, from our perspective and what the world is saying, cybersecurity is very important, and we want to help enable and build the community and focus it quite significantly around cybersecurity. So yeah, also just wanted to say thank you to Duncan, who's going to have a little chat just now, from Pam Golding. He's the head of IT. So yeah, appreciate you're going to say something shortly. And I'm just thinking if there's anything else. Yeah, and obviously thank you to Joe for because you know, this is your recommendation in terms of the venue. So we wouldn't be here having this experience if it wasn't for you endorsing the spot and the team obviously that are helping us this evening. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to just say, and just relax and enjoy the evening, meet new people, have some good meaningful conversations, and yeah, just collaborate and share and try and solve some of your cybersecurity challenges. We're here to help and help facilitate. I'm going to hand over to Brian Pinnock. Do you want to? You okay then?
I might swap places.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's swap now. So Brian Pinnock is from Mimecast. He's the EMEA the EMEA engineering director. Yeah, director for engineering for EMEA. Yeah, sorry, Brian. Sorry? What?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Brian's a cybersecurity legend. So thank you, Brian. Brian is going to just give us a couple of insights on the latest State of Email Security report that Mimecast released, I think in about March, where they interviewed about 1,700 CISOs and cybersecurity professionals. And yeah, so just over to you, Brian, just to share a couple of thoughts on that.
Okay.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to echo Chad. Welcome everybody. I think this is an amazing venue. I've just sent a photo to a colleague of mine, my counterpart in North America, and the comment that came back was, "This looks nothing like winter in the Midwest." So, and I think just another point, just to set your mind at ease, the last time I gave a talk at Grove, the last time I was invited to talk about Grove, was actually at one of those Innovators Clubs. And clearly I spoke too long, because that was 5 years ago. This is the first time they've invited me back, so I promise I'll keep it dead short so that I can get invited back to speak
we're all good.
Get access again.
Thank you.
So super briefly, I've been asked just to talk about the Mimecast State of Email Security report. Now, we bring out a lot of these kinds of reports all the time. They're useful in various ways. The reason I like this particular one is this is not us telling you what we're seeing. This is actually you telling us, maybe not you personally, but people in your kind of roles telling us what you're seeing. And as Chad mentioned, it's across a broad number of regions, but more importantly, it includes very specifically a very large number of South African businesses and South African CISOs, IT managers, CIOs, those kind of people. So just a couple of call outs. So the big thing that kind of came through in this report was that ransomware, particularly in the South African region, is still a problem. And that's actually contrary to what you might read if you're listening to things that are kind of focused more on parts of Europe and parts of North America. And if you actually look at the stats, and I look at these stats quite closely, particularly on things like ransomware, or as one of a very sort of close ex-colleague of mine likes to call them, trying to avoid the word ransomware, altogether, because it's become extortion actually. It's more about the various types of extortion. It's not really the ransom. Sometimes there is actually not even a ransom. Sometimes it's some form of extortion. We should really be thinking about it as extortion. And what's interesting actually is these things come in waves. So right now it's taking a little bit of a dip in places like North America, UK, Ireland. It's actually way up in odd places like Norway, Denmark, parts of Germany, and guess what, South Africa. So that's kind of one of the first takeaways, and that's what we're seeing. That's what some of our opposition are seeing. That's what some of people who kind of work, some of our ecosystem partners are seeing. So that's a big takeaway. That's still a problem. So if anyone says, "Yeah, our red report said ransomware is going down," you go, "Not here, sorry." And it's kind of obvious when you think about it. If somebody puts an electric fence around their orchard, where does someone else go? It's been stealing all the fruit, go to the low-hanging fruit, where there's no electric fence around the orchard. That's kind of the logic of it. And we're in this area where we're less well protected. And we're not, we're in fairly good company if you consider Norway and, some of those Northern European countries. So we're kind of there. Just there's a whole bunch of other takeaways. One of the big ones which we got from talking to people like yourselves is it's becoming harder and harder to get a seat at the table and have a meaningful conversation with the board. So there's a lot of content in there, which is very valuable to having kind of board leveled. And it doesn't matter if it's necessarily your board of directors, but it might be your risk board, might be just someone who's not talking about IT and cybersecurity. And it's about taking those nuggets and making them sort of speaking in the same kind of language as those sorts of people would like to hear, and talking about things that impact the business. So there's some takeaways there. There's bits and pieces of takeaways. I've spoken about the ransomware. I don't want to go into too much detail. Just two more things really on the report. Otherwise, I'm going to end up not getting invited for another 5 years. There's a lot of impersonation going on, domain impersonation. And one of the big things that we've seen, and it's kind of taken on a bit of a global wave, and we've been at it for a long time. It's one of Mimecast services, is implementing DMARC in an environment. What's quite interesting is large number of organizations in the report said no, they've seen their domain being impersonated, but a relatively small number, 4 out of 10 respondents said no, they've actually done anything about DMARC. And then I mentioned to Chad, actually, just purely randomly, this thing just popped into one of my Slack channels today, and someone said, hey, do you know that if you're doing anything to do with PCI, anything to do with credit cards and credit card processing and all that, you don't necessarily have to be a bank, it could be a retailer, it could be any of those organizations that have to comply with PCI. Right now, it's one of those nice to haves in the PCI standard. The next PCI standard, it's going to be a requirement that your DMARC has actually got to get up to P equals reject status. So just throwing that out there, it's still a ways away, but these projects, particularly if you've got a fairly large number of domains, got a fairly complex environment, these things can take 12 or more months to kind of roll out. So that was quite an interesting takeaway for me. And I think the last one really is, you can't kind of leave a conversation like this with the year that we've had with artificial intelligence and all of the noise around artificial intelligence, and we've got quite a lot of good content around that. I think the big takeaway is everybody's talking about it, everybody says they're going to be doing something about it. The reality is it's very, very mixed, and you can't get too caught up in the hype. It's got a place, absolutely. We use artificial intelligence, but I think it's one of those things where if you're still talking about it, there's a problem. It should actually almost be hidden from the end user. It should definitely just be part of your overall security stack, because absolutely, and I think ChatGPT is a very good kind of analog for AI in general, because what it does sometimes is quite amazing. Comes out with things that are quite surprising. Every now and again I do something with it and think like, wow, you've just blown my mind. But equally I do things with it and go, jeepers, you're absolutely hallucinating. I don't know what crack you're on that you actually came back with that response. And that's the problem with AI. It can be brilliant up to a point, and then there's just always those false positives that come through. And as long as you kind of acknowledge that and know where they are, and you're augmenting that either with people or other technology that's not AI, that's trained on different data sets, etc., then you're kind of covered. So there's some good content there. And I think maybe just to hand back to Chad, and if anyone wants to get hold of this, I'm sure we're going to inundate you and make you pay for the privilege of this beautiful sunset by getting an email, which please don't delete it. Click on the link, download the report. There is some good stuff in there. But I'm going to hand back to Chad, and maybe you can kind of drill in on the DMARC side of things. So there's some interesting takeaways there.
Thanks, Brian.
So thank you.
I appreciate some of those insights. And
did I keep it short?
You'll definitely be back, because the sun is going down.
It's down to 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years maybe. Thanks, Brian. Now the sun is going down in half an hour, so we've got to really be all ready for that. So yeah, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Are there any questions for Brian? Otherwise, he's going to be around for some beers.
Yeah, I'll just come chat to me on a beer rather. That's better.
Cool. So another part of the session that we like to share at the Cyber Sunsets is just to introduce you to one of our customers, right? Who's had an experience with Grove and one of our technologies, so that it's very important for you to get some peer-to-peer learnings, right? And just to hear his perspective from what he's experienced with engaging with Grove as a company, and also engaging with our problem-solving capabilities in terms of cybersecurity. So Duncan, you're welcome to sit down and have a chat. So Duncan's the head of IT from Pam Golding. I'm sure that you all know Pam Golding. Please say that you do. I'm very, very confident about that. And yeah, so Duncan has been a great customer of ours for a number of years on Google, in fact. Very open, transparent relationship that we have in terms of what we can do, what we can't do. So we really appreciate that. So thank you very much for all that you do in terms of our partnership and as a customer. Brian definitely was correct in terms of the DMARC capabilities. In the email security reports, I did read that, I know you mentioned sort of 40%, but I read a stat in there saying that 1 in 3 organizations have actually implemented DMARC, right? So there's still a lot of action to take place in the community. So Duncan, thanks for taking action in terms of the Mimecast DMARC capability. I know that you were having some challenges with domain spoofing, email domain spoofing, and that was a challenge that you threw out to us to say, hey, let's see where we can sort of try and solve that problem. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your role and that challenge that you faced at Pam Golding?
Yeah. So I'm the head of group IT. We operate primarily with 8 core countries that we're in. Overall, it's a user base of 2,500 people, both staff and our agents. But we're the best of both worlds in the fact that we're a corporate, but we're family run. So very entrepreneurial, but a fairly relatively large user base. And of that user base, a fair amount are franchise businesses. So out of Africa, or through Africa, the business is franchised. Mauritius is the only one that's branch owned. And then even in South Africa, 2/3 of the offices that you'll see are all franchised. Only 1/3 are branch owned. So everything that's outside of our data center, only 1/3 of it I'm directly responsible for. 2/3 of it is up to each individual business to run as they see fit, ideally conforming to our recommended spec, but we can't enforce things. So, endpoint protection, even those things, all we can do is put down recommendations. We can only enforce that in 1/3 of our business. So my focus is really the core network, the core data center run services or cloud hosted services that everybody makes use of, and seeing how we can benefit that. And the security side goes 2 ways. One is trying to protect the business from a brand and reputation perspective, as well as actually protect our customer. So in the property industry, there's a big targeted drive at the moment from some fairly sophisticated syndicates who are actively going after almost every aspect of the property transaction, because they know that there are a lot of old agents, a lot of small mom and pops conveyances, if not those, and even older people who aren't cyber aware. So it's easy to send an email, change the spelling of something, and you think you've got an email from the right person. They don't pay attention. The second email that came in is the one with the banking details. They respond to that. Next thing, 500,000 Rand has been paid as a deposit into the wrong account. So that's prevalent throughout the industry. So my big goal has been to try and secure our mail infrastructure as much as possible and in every way we can. And the challenge being that due to how the industry is structured, sensitive data is sent on email. It's either on WhatsApp, but traditionally when it's coming back centrally, it's mail. IDs, banking details, all of that's there. So that's where the challenge is to make sure that we've got as much security as we can in place. And to your point, something like DMARC, so I've been head of IT for 4 years now. 4 years ago, you asked me what DMARC was, no clue actually. But it's now become something that, from a legal compliance perspective, we have to have in place. SPF, then it was Deacon, fine, understood. Then DMARC was this grey area. Now, the first question that happens if there's a compromised mailbox, oh, you don't have DMARC in place, so therefore the issue is on your side, you must have been compromised. Whereas at least now, in a response to a fraud investigation, we've got the basics in place, and it starts to become a more collaborative conversation, not just a finger pointing exercise because we don't have DMARC. So that's where we came from.
What was sort of that catalyst moment that made you and the business realize that you had to take action and go out there and look at solutions? Can you maybe share a bit about? I mean, it might have been a couple of events that built up, but what kind of tipped you over to say, hey, we need to make an investment here and take action?
So I think I've been banging on since I took over running the department. I've been banging on about we've got to get business critical services out of email. We need to secure services. We need to try and use portals. But due to that branch franchise split, the franchises would just say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to carry on doing our own thing. Franchise is then where we end up with the biggest set of compromises because they're not paying attention. They don't realize that they've been compromised, and it's only once a transaction goes through. Suddenly then we find out that we've got a compromised mailbox. We retrospectively try and correct that, but our brand reputation is now at risk. And we had a couple of attorneys who kept pointing fingers and saying, actually, Pam Golding's involved in these transactions. Interesting, we're picking up consistently that you're the cause. A lot of the cases we weren't the cause, we were involved, but they're basically going after and trying to identify user mailboxes, compromise those mailboxes, and then just monitor email. So it's a different approach. They're not necessarily actually trying to send out email on our behalf, but they're trying to get access to our mailboxes.
That's right. And your experience with Mimecast in this process of Grove helping?
So I mean, maybe some background to this. Chad mentioned we've had a long-term partnership with Grove, many years, trying to implement a good couple of solutions, trying to get the board to understand the need for security and the need for additional spend, and the fact that as things change, we actually need to implement another product. So we were chatting earlier, and we've implemented 2 mail security products, 2 other security products. Why do we need the third? Why do we need Mimecast? Does that replace something else that we have? No, it's on top of it. But the cost of Mimecast is the cost of our mail infrastructure. Yes, as it should be, because it's this specific tiered product. It is the go-to standard. So that conversation has been many years in the making. So we've gotten a few things across the board. Grove happily implemented our full Google Workspace. It's now called. I've lost track. We might have renamed it since we last chatted. So we implemented that in Mauritius. Our full Mauritian business is running in Workspaces, and we were trying to get to. I've been trying to get the full Mimecast, ideally the S2 solution in place for a while, and we keep hitting a stumbling block of spend, and the board's got some other initiatives on board, so we never quite get there, but managed to get DMARC across the line as an entry into it. We're in the Mimecast environment. We've got that partnership. We've got Grove on board, so we've got 2 strong security partners who can then we can add services on. So we don't like to, as a business, really have too many partners involved, and we prefer to have long-term engagement partnerships. So once we find a vendor specifically like Mimecast, where there are tiered products that can fulfill all of the needs, and we can tack them on top of our existing products, that was a real value add. So it was kind of the foot in the door, and knowing that we can form that partnership, we can integrate the solutions and add to it as our needs grow.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I mean, it's not very often that I have been involved in a project where customers taking DMARC first. I must be honest in terms of the Mimecast suite. So it's brilliant that you've made that investment, and now you can expand effectively into other capabilities.
One of the other reasons that drove DMARC as the first reason to implement was we've got a relatively small IT team. It's myself, 2 other managers, a service desk of 4 people, and that's the sort of support side. Our network and infrastructure is outsourced to a third-party vendor. Our desktop support's outsourced. So as a core team, IT is relatively small. We don't have the time to have a single person dedicated to reviewing mail logs, to reviewing security logs, to looking at our central consoles. So we needed a product that doesn't require weeks of training. We needed a really easy to use product, and that's where Mimecast really showed value. Was a beautifully technical, detailed product, such a simple and easy to use user interface that I can put somebody from our senior management team in front of it and guarantee you they can figure out whether we've got issues or not. And one of the other great advantages of the DMARC solution is it actually provided more than just security. We got insights into mail delivery volumes by servers that we didn't know we had anymore, that was sitting in somebody's SPF record that we thought had been removed. All of those things came to the front, and we went, why are we delivering 100 mails through X server that we've never heard of? So we were able to clean up SPF, old legacy SPF records, and even from a mail delivery, from a marketing perspective, one of our biggest challenges is we're a marketing company ultimately. and our franchises go off and sign up to third-party services that we're not aware of, and they think are working. And turns out because they weren't implementing SPF, they didn't have decom in place, their mails weren't even being delivered. We were able to identify that and then actually correct it. So that's been another business add in terms of value from a security product that's actually given us benefits in a marketing space.
What last piece of advice would you give to the community here in terms of DMARC and implementing that?
Sure. Well, from my perspective, don't give up. Keep at the board. Explain all the possibilities. And actually, and what I did was, a good thing was give them the full stack. Here's everything we should be spending. Here's S2. Here's the archiving product. We should have all of this. But if we just start with DMARC, it's the smaller cost, and that actually got it across the board. So that being said, we are looking at adding on those products, both weighing up the archiving from an auditing and a risk and a compliance perspective, as well as the full S2 solution. That's where I want to be. And I've also used it to say, if look at competitor products, if we move to a Google or an Office 365, this would be the cost, but we would still implement Mimecast on top of that. And that's sort of really gotten home, and the board's really understood that Mimecast is not in place of, it's on top of, and there's value out there. So yeah, and just to mention, the Grove partnership has really been amazing. We had a Google issue recently on 2 of our domains, one being a Mauritius domain supported by Grove, and one on a franchise domain. Exactly the same issue. The franchises had to contact Google directly themselves, first level support, got the runaround, probably got about 8 different answers in the space of a week. Grove got the initial same response, but persevered, and thanks to their relationship, actually got us to the exact resolution. So thanks to Grove, we were able to implement the fix and then pass that value onto our franchise. So just again, from that partnership and that long-term value add, even though implementing Google Workspaces, it's easy, but when it goes wrong.
Thanks, Duncan. Really appreciate those kind words. Are there any questions while Duncan is here?
No, you're not. It's a sales job in my
Could be better than IT.
Did a brilliant job.
Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks very much. Cool. So I'm not going to keep you from the sunsets, which is obviously one of the main purposes here. And obviously, please have some amazing snacks and some drinks with us. Share some of your own stories in terms of cybersecurity, some of your challenges. There might be someone here that has already solved that problem that you might be having at your business. So yeah, just share the evening and make yourself at home and really enjoy the rest of the evening. And thanks so much for making the time to come. Thank you very much to everybody who's here. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, it's for you guys. You're going to be the community moving forward. So we're going to have more of these sessions. So please support us, and we can grow the circle bigger and make the community stronger. So yeah, thank you very much. Good. Enjoy the evening.
Thanks,